Hello and welcome to English II. I'm your online teacher, Miss Abear. The last time we met, we started on a new unit, and it is an Engage New York curriculum, and it is The Cup of Endurance Runs Over. We are looking at how authors use rhetoric and word choices to develop ideas and claims. Today, we are going to be looking at Dr. King's letter, paragraphs 1 through 5. All right, so our end of the unit task, I will always tell you what our end of the unit task is at the beginning of every lesson. You will rely on your reading and analysis of Letter from Birmingham Jail to write a well-developed response to the prompt, analyze how King develops and refines his claims to advance his purpose. And I know that you remember that I told you we will always look at an agenda. So for today's agenda, again, introduction of our agenda, we will do some homework accountability. We will again listen to a masterful reading. We will read and discuss. We will also have a jigsaw discussion. You will do a quick write, and then we'll close with a little bit of homework. You can see the standards that we will be addressing today in under standards and text, and we are only working with Dr. King's speech, paragraphs 1 through 5. So let's look at some homework accountability. Guys, you will be accountable every time that we have homework. You will be accountable to someone else in the class, whether it's a small group or a partner, to be able to discuss that homework. So right now I want you to turn and talk and discuss, based on your annotations, what reasons does King offer for being in Birmingham in paragraphs 1 through 5. All right, good job, okay? So let's talk about some of those things that I heard you guys saying. So he has to be in Birmingham because he has basic organizational ties there, and that is in paragraph 2. King is in Birmingham because injustice is there. That's in paragraph 3. And I heard you guys say, even when King is in Atlanta, he's concerned about what's happening in Birmingham. Most of you just put, he's concerned with what's happening in Birmingham from paragraph 4, and that's okay. So those are the reasons that I heard you guys talk about, and that's a really good job. Thank you for that. It's very important that you continue on that journey. Now, let's again look at some more homework accountability. I want you to turn and talk to, you could do the same partner or a different one, and I want you to discuss the vocabulary words that you identified and defined in paragraphs 1 through 5. All right, good job. Let's look at a few words that I identified. Just know that when we continue with this letter, I'm not going to identify all of the vocabulary because that can get really difficult as far as these lessons go because they can be kind of long. And so know that you're going to be accountable for that vocabulary whether or not we discuss it or you discuss it within your classroom. But let's look at a few words that I identified and then we'll move forward. All right, I identified the word affiliate. An affiliate is an organization such as a television station that's a member of a larger organization such as a national network. So MPB, Mississippi Public Broadcasting, is an affiliate of PBS, the public broadcasting station. PBS is the national company, and we are an affiliate. That means that we stand on our own, but we get a lot of our programming from that national organization. And so that is a way that you can identify the word affiliate. Now, the next word or phrase is actually direct action. What does that mean, and what is he doing with that? Direct action is the use of strikes, demonstration, and other public forms of protest rather than the negotiation to achieve one's demands, okay? So know what direct action is. Interrelatedness. That's a state of mutually dependent relationships. Guys, please make sure that you understand that interrelatedness. That's important for you to understand. Inescapable. Inescapable means incapable of being shared between two or more people or groups. And last is underlying. That's fundamental and basic. So you should have identified those words in paragraphs 1 through 5 in your reading last night. Right now, we are going to listen to paragraphs 1 through 5 again so that you can focus in on how King makes and supports claims. So right now you need to have your text out, the one that I gave you with Dr. King's speech. You will also notice in the YouTube description or on your copy where the text or where paragraph 5 ends. I will show you on your copy at what point you pause the video. So this particular video will pause at 4:29. So this will take 4.5 minutes roughly for us to listen to paragraphs 1 through 5. And all of those notes will be on the text for you to be able to follow along. It'll tell you where to start and where to stop. All right, so I'm going to pause here so that you can listen to paragraphs 1 through 5. All right, good job. You guys did really well. I saw you annotating. Now you are going to get with a partner and you're going to reread. Now when I ask you to reread, that doesn't mean that you're going to slowly read every single paragraph. But you are going to skim back over it. You read it for homework last night. You've listened to it again just now. And again, you're gonna read back over it, but for some specific things. So I'm gonna put some questions up here on the board. And guys, that looks like a lot of questions, doesn't it? Because it is. And so with a partner, you're going to reread paragraphs 1 and 2 and answer those questions that are on the board. All right, good job. Now, your teacher has the answers to those questions. We're not going to go over them in class, but I do want you to notice that some of the way that these questions are presented will help lead you to, or I hope that you notice, they will lead you to some of those different ideas that we have to recognize and be able to analyze later on in the text. They're asking you about central idea. They're asking you about supporting details. There's lots of vocabulary within those questions that is leading you to some of the tasks that you're going to be doing later on. All right, so I am going to look at a couple of the questions, not all of them. We're going to look at a couple of them. So first off, which of the clergyman's statements does King report reading in the first sentence of the letter? So in your own words, what does the statement say about King's work? And you can see here, again, I'm writing in complete sentences. King reports reading a statement that describes his activities as unwise and untimely. That statement says that King's work is foolish and taking place at the wrong time. Note, though, that the claims that King makes in his response to the clergyman's statements are considered counterclaims. Counterclaims are claims that are opposed to the author's central claim. When King cites the statement and then disagrees with its claims, King is making a counterclaim. So that idea of these clergymen are saying that his time there in Birmingham is unwise and untimely. And we know now that it's not, but that was their way of telling him to go away. And so that wasn't going to happen. So now let's look at a couple of other questions. Why does King write this letter? King writes this letter to respond to the clergyman's criticisms and statements about his unwise and untimely present activities. And you see I said that that's from paragraph 1. King also writes the letter because he says the clergymen are men of genuine goodwill and he wants to respond to them in a sincerely set forth criticisms, right? Now we're going to look at why the phrase outsiders coming in is placed in quotation marks. That means that's a phrase that the clergyman must have used. By placing that phrase in quotes, King shows that he is directly addressing his critics' accusations. All right, again, another question that we're going to address is, based on King's affiliations, what can you infer about the purpose of the direct action program in Birmingham? Well, you can see here, because King's affiliates are groups like the Alabama Christian Movement for Human Rights, the purpose of the direct action is likely to secure human rights. I'm going to leave this on the board here for a second in case some of you need to take some additional notes. These notes can be on your notebook paper from where you've answered those questions, or it can be on the text itself, whatever makes this easier for you to keep up with. These are going to be the only questions that we address from that list. Good job. Now we're going to move forward and we're going to do a jigsaw discussion. You remember I told you that for each lesson there is a packet that your teacher will have? Well, in this packet is some jigsaw discussion, some jigsaw pages, and hopefully your teacher has made copies of those. And you can see I've shown you kind of what those look like on the slide behind me. So what you're going to do is make sure you have that out. You're going to form groups of 3, and you want to make sure that you have King's letter with you. And you are going to answer those questions. I'm not sure exactly how much time that you need, but we're going to leave this up and let you guys do that, and your teacher can unpause the video when you guys are ready to move on. Good job. All right, now, some of you were scratching your head going, well, how am I going to know about these other paragraphs when my group only did this one paragraph? Well, I'm glad you asked. Now, because you formed groups of 3, you are now going to do new groups of 3, but each group should have one member that represents a different paragraph. So now when you get together, I want you to discuss the key questions on your tools. Once you've completed those, go ahead and select some other questions from the tools to discuss, because all of you need to know the answers to all of those jigsaws. All right, now again, I told you we're not going to look at the answers to every single question. We are only going to look now at those key questions. So one of the key questions was, what do the type of references King uses in paragraph 3 suggest about King? Well, we know he uses multiple religious references to describe himself and his work. These references develop King as a messenger or a servant to the people in Birmingham, and his work as gospel work. By comparing himself to 8th century prophets and the Apostle Paul, King is developing himself as a person with an important historical and spiritual purpose. And we can see that today, but they couldn't see that back then. And so he is establishing himself as that religious authority, that he has that authority to speak on these matters. Okay? Let's look at another one of those key questions. How does King's use of the references relate to the purpose he stated at the beginning of paragraph 3? I am in Birmingham because injustice is here. By using religious references like "Thus saith the Lord" and "Gospel of Freedom," King is providing a spiritual base for his argument. This suggests that King's purpose of fighting injustice is a religious purpose. And by using the Bible to support his argument, he is providing a moral basis for his presence and activities in Birmingham. I'm going to leave this up for a second before I move on to the next set of key questions, because you all need all of these responses. And again, look at them. They are in complete sentences. You need to make sure that you are writing in complete sentences. Good job. Now let's look at a couple more of those key questions. What is the relationship of King's use of these references in his addresses, when he addresses the clergymen? The clergymen are religious leaders who likely understand and relate to the religious references. King's use of those references demonstrates to the clergymen that he understands them and shares their same religious beliefs. These references to shared beliefs make King's defense of his actions more convincing and reasonable to religious leaders. And then lastly, what is the impact of King's claim, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere? How does King refine this claim? The statement impacts the text by showing that King's work in Birmingham affects other communities throughout the world. Direct action is taking place in Birmingham, but the work is significant to everyone. King is in Birmingham to influence the movement there, but he also wants to influence human rights in other parts of the country. King refines this claim by explaining that people are in an inescapable network of mutuality. He explains that people in a country have a shared destiny. Okay? And so make sure that you have written those responses down, because it's important that you know those key questions and the answers to those key questions, because again, it's going to help you with those tools. It's going to help you with your end of the unit task. All right, good job. Now, as always, what are we going to do? We're going to do a quick write. All right, so make sure you have a piece of paper out, and I want you to answer this question. How does King develop his reasons for being in Birmingham in paragraphs 3 through 5? And then how do these ideas connect to the first paragraphs of his letter? So go back to your annotations to find your evidence, and you can also go back to those jigsaw tools or any of those other things that we've done to help you answer those questions in your quick write. All right, great job. I can't wait to read some of your responses. Some of you, I think, wanted a little bit more time. So maybe, I know we're getting close to the end of your time in class. So hopefully your teacher will allow you to take your binder home and continue writing if you so need to. And I'm excited to read what you guys have written. All right, the last thing that we're going to do is a little bit of homework assignment. So tonight I want you to reread paragraph 4. Of Letter from Birmingham Jail and respond to the following prompt. King concludes paragraph 4 with the statement, anyone who lives inside the United States can never be considered an outsider. How does King develop this idea across paragraph 4? What details does he use to develop that idea? So write that question down. Be prepared to discuss that tomorrow, because as you know, we're going to have homework accountability and you're going to have to discuss that with someone else in your class. But here's the thing, guys. When you leave this classroom, when you go home for the day, there is nothing that says you can't discuss this with a partner or with someone else from this class or from another class who is doing the same text with me. So there's nothing that says just because we're going to talk about it in class tomorrow doesn't mean that you can't talk about it this evening. So if there are things that you want to talk about outside of class, please feel free to do that, because that's going to enhance your experience with this unit. So until next time, happy learning.